Good morning. I want to thank everyone who joins us. My name is Poltava, and it's my pleasure to welcome you at Ukraine Media Center. Today we have invited you to discuss quite an important topic, a topic we've called open and transparent municipalities. How close are Ukrainian cities to meeting EU standards? We all know that the choice of Ukrainians is the movement towards the European Union, but the movement should be going on not only on the national but also on the local level. That's why it's a pressing topic that we are about to discuss. Joining us in the studio will be Transparency International, presenting the program Open and Transparent Municipalities, the results of an open survey, example of 11 Ukrainian cities. How close are Ukrainian municipalities to meeting EU standards? Today, our meeting will be conducted in two blocks, and let me introduce the participants of our first block. Joining us are Andrii Borovyk, Executive Director of Transparency International Ukraine, and Olesia Koval, Head of the Ukraine's Transparent Cities Program. Thank you for joining. Good morning, Andrii. A question to you right away. Obviously, I would like to discuss the importance, why is the topic of transparency should be on agenda on the national and, of course, at the local level. How can it influence the context and the agenda? Well, I had quite different speaking points, but in the view of the events unfolded within the last week and a half, the transparency of the municipalities, the project that we've been working on for 8 years. Well, this year we've decided to change the format somewhat because strategically, remembering that there's a war being waged, we have a parallel track, so to say, civil track, Euro integration track, and the openness of municipalities, accountability and transparency is not only about us because it's better for our citizens, it's about our readiness. What are we going to bring to Europe? Let me tell you right away that in some sectors we are way more advanced than them. In many sectors, for example, in judicial authority, finding a name of a judge in Germany is impossible. Like all those pictures, online biographies and stuff. Well, you know, we traditionally don't have a lot of trust in the state authorities. Ukrainians trust politicians who promise a lot, but they don't trust state institutions. And it's important to understand in this context that your integration that we talk about, because probably like starting from July, from the protests in Kyiv, we're talking about something that we should preserve here, to bring something to bring to Europe. Euro integration, so to say, has withdrawn to the background, but even despite a policy and standing of the one small country in the West, we should be prepared to opening of negotiations, and we have a choice. Like, we come and we say we haven't been waiting for you to open the door, but we've done a lot on our end. Or we can either just sit and wait. My position is like, let's prepare something, let's bring something new to them. And Euro integration is not like Ursula von der Leyen and Vice Prime Minister for Euro integration. It's not Kyiv and Brussels or Brussels requirements and monitoring. Euro integration is first of all about the people. It's for the people. And who's the closest to the people? Local level, local authorities, local councils, territorial communities and their heads, because Kyiv can move Euro integration, but it's not Kyiv who comes to Europe, it's whole Ukraine, and Ukraine is made up of communities, towns, cities, villages, and people inhabiting them. And we should emphasize it. How can we bring our cities and communities closer to Euro integration? This situation was different in many cities, but how are they related to Euro integration? What is it about? Like, it's something going on in Kyiv. We're going to be accepted, and then we're going to have like cheaper cars. But we have to comply with the European standards. We have to set the tone for them, because we have to provide an example to the. We have a lot of national examples like Prozor, for example, and we can bring way more examples on the local level. That's the first reason. And secondly, it's difficult to talk about openness during the war, but it's still possible. Not everything should be closed during the war, because people continue living. We get more IDPs, we get more veterans, and the population of many cities is growing. And we have good examples, you know, or when we see some cities that cannot cope with the information that is coming, and they could only post it online and make it accessible in a couple of clicks. Everything could be online. That's our basic goal, to demonstrate where we have gaps, and together, going together with the municipal councils, territorial communities, with the heads of communities, start moving towards Europe and champion the principles of transparency and accountability. And let me tell you something to summarize it. The cities are doing a great job, specifically during this difficult period of war, shellings, power shutdowns. Yesterday there was a terrible shelling, the terrible strike in the west of the country. But still, we have to give people this ray of hope in terms of openness of authorities, because the last week and a half paint quite a different picture about what's going on in the country, and local authorities can become that bridge of trust, that small bridge. They can say that things are real bad in Kyiv, but they're good on our end. Morally, it supports people a lot. And I want to think that this idea with European transparency is supported with the donors. However, it's quite difficult now to work with them, but the taxpayers in Switzerland and the Netherlands keep helping us, and we incredibly appreciate it. And to summarize it, we have to remember that we're not only doing it for those who live there now, but also for those who come back from the front lines, because we're sitting here with Olesia, but we wouldn't have been able to do it if it was not for the armed forces of Ukraine. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank you for your hospitality, and I'm handing you over to Olesia for this wonderful activity. Olesia, so let's talk in detail. We understand the program was transformed recently. Most likely you developed some and probably implemented some new methodology, some pilot methodologies. Shared with us what were the changes you were able to achieve, what did you have to improve. We remember last year's experience when some cities were trying to, like so to say, tune in to those assessments you've made. So how did your methodology work this time? Yeah, thank you. So probably the last stories related to manipulations in the websites of the municipal councils pushed us to changes in our methodology. Well, now there's a lot of changes expected to happen in the cities. Now we're presented one module containing 40 indicators, but within a year we intend to study 6 or 7 different areas and keep publishing the results. For us, it's one of the ways to keep the municipalities in tune, keep them motivated, don't give them a lot of work for 1 year, but rather to let them implement something that, in the opinion of ours and of our European partners, could be useful. So let me tell you where it all started. Andrii said a lot about trust to the local authorities, to about the challenges. He said the first contacts of the people are with municipal authorities, and not everybody understands how multiple are those contacts, starting with utility services and ending with any changes in the streets. So what I would like to say, Andrii has already said that we keep working on the changes on the national and local level. We have something to take pride in, and we want this experience of the organization to be transformed and to become useful. We made a rating of transparency for 100 Ukrainian cities. We have complex assessments containing 70 indicators where you can see specific changes in the municipalities once a year. That approach was great, but still we're looking for a better one, because we understand if, for example, you are not being controlled as you're writing your scientific work, you're going to write it within 3 days or nights. Now, we've taken 11 cities which live in different circumstances. For example, Zaporizhia and Kharkiv, they have way more war challenges. Meanwhile, Lutsk and Lviv have more challenges related to IDPs. All those challenges are scattered all across the country. So we try to find out how do the big cities cope with those principles of transparency. Does the municipal authority publish all of the resolutions starting from the municipalities all the way down to commissions? Is there information about budget, regulatory policies? Well, we have 9 different points there, and the main topics like humanitarian aid, everything should be gathered in one place. But it turned out that even the big cities don't always cope with that. It seemed to us as citizens, like if there are budgets, there are like working horses in the municipal councils, everything's going to be all right. So it's not only about the population or the amount of money, about the budget. So today we would like to urge other cities on top of those 11 to implement our recommendations, as long as they can be implemented gradually with advice from our colleagues, rather than doing everything in the last moment. Today there is an opportunity to start implementing things and to test them. So we have 10 regional centers plus Kyiv. And I'm not saying those words leaders or anti-leaders because the sampling is quite small. At Dnipro, which is ahead of all, have 66 points. In the transparency rating, the cities had to score at least 3/4 of points to be able to be called transparent. All of the cities are below that threshold, but definitely the cities have something to take pride in. They've arranged at least basic communication, but not everyone, not everywhere. And we can see that, for example, Kharkiv, Poltava, and Lutsk, they have more or less similar results, but the reasons for those results are quite different. Those 11 cities, how did you pick them? Or are those the cities which agreed to take part? No, we never asked them. We didn't give them a chance because we know that some cities were happy to not end up in our rating. However, other ones were quite saddened by that. And as I've said, it's about different level of transparency, the population, different budgets, location within the borders of our country, and we were trying to compose a structure of the cities that would be different. For example, not all of the cities have mayors. Some of the mayors there are being replaced by acting heads of municipal councils. And a little spoiler, we've analyzed 100 cities and we wanted to see the heads of the cities, and at 3/4 there were mayors. However, in 24 cities there were no such offices occupied. So this is what the cities failed. Basically what I wanted to say, we have a lot of indicators related to what's going on in Europe, where we copied their experience But there's also a lot of our war challenges, and the war challenges are being coped with quite bad by the cities. What am I talking about? None of the cities was able to adequately and to fully sort out the humanitarian aid problem. The municipalities have no idea about the principles of distribution, the list of those for whom it's intended for. So there was a lot of recommendations provided, but the municipal councils continue ignoring this important track. Again, among those 11 cities, only one city has relevant unit. It's called Kyiv Humanitarian Aid that collects all the information about humanitarian aid, and none of other cities ensure this entry point for the citizens. In the same way, the commissions that work and make decisions on ruined property, they don't have generalized statistics, but it's a lot of budget money. The communities have a right to know who was allocated which amount, because this is what they pay their taxes for, but there's a lot of questions about this. And in the same way, we've been urging the municipalities for the second year. How can the citizens, how can the denizens get to the hearings of the city council if they're happening online? People were voting for those deputies. They delegated their authorities to them, and now they don't know how to get to their meeting. The municipality should make an instruction or something. Also, a lot of municipalities ensured basic transparency. They have a working search function. It may sound funny, but in the on the examples of regional centers, we could see that, for example, we still couldn't find some documents in the websites of some local authorities, and it's year 2025 outside. Also, not all of the cities posted their statute. Like, the denizens cannot read the statute of their community. The businesses can find out about local taxes and levies, and we are going to write a lot about it. It was posted on our website. That's why we sent all of the cities over there. Our website contains detailed recommendations. We've developed the stencil for self-assessment. The municipalities can check against, and the recommendations are integrated there. So shouldn't they be compliant with something, it contains the practices so that the municipalities could use them. So basically, I've covered the problems part. They are more detailed there, example by example, but if we generalize it, we could see a formal excess for formal approach. I'm sorry. For example, the announcement was published, but the document that it refers to was not posted. So basically, the municipal authorities fulfill that indicator formally, but the denizens cannot use it practically. We also pay a lot of attention to make sure that the denizens could understand what's going on in the website, so they could come to one page to see everything, not to look for the quarterly report somewhere in the news. And that's about our further plans. But if you have any questions, I could answer them. Well, I could stop at problematics. You've mentioned two key nuances: humanitarian aid and aid to those who got a disability as a result of Russian aggression. So let's discuss if there are any examples that the municipalities, the communities could rely upon when it comes to humanitarian aid, for example. Did you see in any city a well-developed step-by-step mechanism, or it just doesn't exist and you were forced to put together the draft of this algorithm yourself? We are preparing a study on 50 cities on humanitarian aid because we understand that we have to check a wider circle. What do our analysts say? They say there are some specific things done in specific cities. Some might have prepared reports, others might have posted the list of the intended recipients. But, for example, in some Czech post in the website of a local authority, like a denizen can go to one website and say, I can find something there, then to another website and find something there. But there was not such thing that somebody in the cities puts together this information and says like that. There's the principles, there's the reporting, and about half of those 50 cities have nothing about humanitarian aid. Also, talking about the barriers, were you able to understand in your study what are the barriers? What makes it impossible for our cities to make it convenient for our denizens? Is it a subjective story, or are there some objective barriers? Well, we remember what time we're living in, and as any other employers, the local authorities have issues with staffing. People get enlisted, people leave the country, people get employed by more competitive employers. So not all of the changes are cheap. Sometimes you just have to create a section in the website and to populate it. But for example, when it comes to electronic services, we understand that you have to invest more in that sector. But our study of 100 cities demonstrated that the necessary precondition of all of the changes is the political will. Without it, our cart is not going to move towards either EU or any better future. So in this case, I would say it's a key aspect. You have to want it. Well, if we prioritize it, if we imagine that there are cities that are watching us and they decide, okay, let's move along this plan, so where do we start? Should they adhere to the principle of the least expenses and to gradually remove the barriers? So, but is it easy to remove those barriers anyway, or is your plan different? Well, as a project manager, I would recommend to start with an audit. In our case, that's self-audit. First of all, you have to identify the weak links, then to group them, to analyze them, to understand the outcome or output. It may be the satisfaction of the denizens or international partnerships. We're talking about a lot of different things, or like engagement of businesses. So I would recommend to evaluate yourself, to identify the weak links, and we are ready to help with that. We can provide like 30, 40, 50 consultations for different municipalities. It can be a written consultation, an online meeting. We always support them when it comes to this issue, because we understand that's the added value that we can bring in for our common good. Now, this self-evaluation questionnaire can be found in your website. Yes, in the website of Transparent Cities, we've published the analytical note. There is a linked stencil, and our coordinator, Maria, she works with the municipality. She can consult everybody, and we're looking for an opportunity if there are some difficult models, so we can indicate all those problems. Okay, so I think now we can proceed to the plans. So that's a slide to relieve our regional coordinator from a lot of work. The cities may find out what they should have to prepare. Within our transformation, we switch to other principles. We're not publishing the methodology ahead. It's only today that the cities have found out how they were evaluated. It's to make them more oriented and the needs of the denizens and challenges of time. And another block of assessment will be about the electronic services. We plan to make a presentation in the month of December. Also, now we're working on automation of certain blocks, and we hope that in the springtime there will be a lot of interesting things about the budget, and in the winter we want to study the open data. The work is already underway. It will be partially automated story, and we will be, I hope, ready to scale it up for other municipalities with more recommendations. And we have a lot of more perks that we're develop. Hope we will be able to implement content analysis of local publics in coordination with our colleagues. We've made one city and we've seen like a lot of different things that are unobvious in the municipalities and communities. Hopefully we will be able to digitalize it and make it useful for the state and for the citizens. So when can we expect to see the results for the majority of Ukrainian cities? Hopefully in the summer we will be able to aggregate everything, probably a small index in which we will be able to see which city made it better with the majority of questions. So our cities have all this time, at least the summer, to work on their issues. No, but now we have to make a section of the problems and to consult the cities so they are ready to comply with our requirements, not only ours. So thank you for your presentation, and we are ready to proceed to another part of our conversation, and I'm inviting Mykola Vavryshchuk, Deputy Mayor of Khmelnytskyi, and Anastasiia Mazurok, Deputy Executive Director of Transparency International Ukraine. Thank you for joining, Mr. Mykola. There will be a lot of questions for you. We understand that the practical side of the implementation of transparency and those standards that integration to European Union is posing in front of us. Well, what we would like to hear from you is about your practical experience. How does it influence the life of the cities? And the first question is how to balance, how the city is supposed to balance between the operational expenses that are numerous, we understand it, and there's a lot of war challenges, war realities, and so how to balance it with interaction with the denizens, which is an important marker for the municipalities. Thank you for this question. For me personally, it's not quite difficult because I think that the balance between the challenges, including war challenges, every city has them, even in the West. The cities, they have it. First, there were more war challenges, but I think it was difficult to find this balance during the year first of the war, when there were restrictions, when people didn't know how to respond to them, when not everybody was understanding whether they should provide any information, when the session is going to happen. Now everybody understands what are the relevant threats. We understand the basic threats. Well, we can expect everything from concepts, but still, it's not so difficult to find this balance. You have to understand here, like we were discussing political will. I agree, political will balances everything. If there is political will, the movement for transparency will be ongoing, even despite war challenges. The war can deter them, a little bit, but if there is political will, everything will be developing. So I think that in the conditions of the challenges, transparency becomes more of a pressing issue. It's about security, because today obtaining information online, it's about security. You don't have to approach a public official. You don't have to go to their office. You can stay at your home or in a shelter and to find the necessary information. It's also about the people. It's important to understand that today there is a staffing issue. It's not only about local authorities. It's about business. It's about everyone today. And when we publish as much information as possible online, as we make it accessible, it relieves us from our work, and it helps a lot of people to understand answers to their questions, something that you don't have to respond then, that you don't have to print in 3 pages. You don't make this person go and submit that written inquiry. So it's not so difficult to find the balance if there is political will and understanding that openness and transparency. It's not about Transparency International monitoring, or, for example, because the community is present in you. It's about the safety and security of the denizens. It's about relieving this workload from the local authorities in order not to look for all that information every time that denizens write an inquiry and you have to respond to them. So in this context of European integration, Andrii said that not everybody still understands what exactly needs to be done, and it's not only about the public officials somewhere in Kyiv, but also in the local authorities. The local authorities are supposed to make some specific steps that are going to bring us closer to this integration, so that when this political process is triggered, we can have understanding that there is understanding of the local authorities of what needs to be done. Now, Nastya, I will ask you about the overall impression. And, well, basically our experience and our analytics demonstrate that currently this understanding is quite blurred. In some cases it's targeted. Some challenges, in some places, some challenges, they require time. For example, in some cases, we require some agreed rules of the game, and in some places, there are narratives that are being shared that work together with the Euro integration principles. The Euro integration process is complex and quite extensive. So in these aspects, we're talking about synchronization of legislation. So there's a lot of educational initiatives that allow us to improve our competences and to interpret some processes that are going on. And on the local level, we understand that the deficit of expertise is even higher than on the central level. That's why our product and our project is aiming not only at monitoring and control, but also to help cities to become a roadmap of changes, to help them to construe the legislation or other requirements, and in other cases to develop some guidelines or instructions or templates, something that can be implemented practically in your activity. Mr. Mykola, a question to you about implementation of those challenges. We've seen this conditional rating. Khmelnytskyi is somewhere in the middle, based on which we can understand that in some aspects you've made it, in some not. So talking about those changes that you were able to implement, and a little bit about barriers from you, so that we can better understand what are the challenges that you're facing, so that probably not everything that you would like to implement can be implemented now. Are there such areas, for example? The changes that are taking place are quite basic, and right today, and for what I understand, the analysis was based on the old site. Recently, we've launched a new site which is way better. It's way more transparent and way more convenient. And I'm convinced during our next analysis we will have better indicators. 78 registers are already in the system, and it's really a cool story where you can take a lot of information from there. Another cool project we're about to place in GIS is the vegetation. We want to digitalize all of the vegetation in the municipality. We are going to engage ecologists and a lot of other experts, but it's also about transparency. It's also important talking about the things that we were able to launch, and we keep developing other chatbots for communication with the denizens. We keep discussing more things, how to engage artificial intelligence in communication with the denizens. Today, artificial intelligence formulates the answers to the basic inquiries for 10 seconds. Meanwhile, a public official, it takes them about an hour to do so. But artificial intelligence is today used just for improvement of communication. When it comes to challenges, I'm not only talking about Khmelnytskyi. I think we've realized some time ago that if there is no person responsible for transparency, there will be no result. Just like in any other process, if there is anybody responsible, there is a result. Result may be positive or negative, but if it's blurry, there will be no result at all. It doesn't mean that a person should work full-time, but it should be a specific responsible person moving the municipality towards transparency. And this responsible person should report to the mayor. Again, when it comes to responsibility, I recommend every municipality to appoint a person responsible for transparency. Well, there's always a problem with the personnel, but municipalities have enough human resources. For example, in Khmelnytskyi, I'm the responsible person. Also, there is a person in the development agency, and on a quarterly basis we analyze what we can improve. And it's also about initiative, because transparency is not only about what's written in the books, it's about cool initiatives that can be suggested. I know that transparency sometimes demonstrates classy initiatives that are being later implemented by the cities. Yes, as studies, they corroborate correlation, because the presence of this responsible person and the growth in the municipalities, it's not like a linear story, appoint a responsible person and the things are gonna work. It's about the focus, it's about the political will, it's about control and monitoring, somebody taking care of this issue on a systemic basis and looking for solutions. I would also like to ask Mykola about the new website. Very frequently we see that a lot of in the webs, that not a lot of problems can be solved by the changes to the website, but sometimes it looks like a complex infrastructural resolution that takes a lot of resources, a lot of time and money. So tell us about your experience. What did help you? Whom did you rely upon? How did you cope with this? There are two ways to develop a website. It's easy. Either you hire a company who does it, which doesn't understand all of the nuances of the needs of the local municipality. Those can be professional people, but they're professional in website development. In that case, it all depends on their terms of reference, but still it's difficult to make it best. Well, in our case, it was done by a utility company. It took us longer because there were issues with personnel, with the presence of specialists, because IT specialists have way higher salaries in IT companies than we can offer, but those people, they understand what's going on within the municipal council because they know the organization. They understand where things should be corrected and improved. That's why we walked that second path. It took us longer, but we understand that those people who worked on the website, they understand all of the issues within the municipality. And now the reaction is better and prompter because the specialists, they understand the essence of the inquiries. How long did it take you? Well, it took a year and a half. Probably if we should have picked the first method using a professional company, it could have taken us probably 3 or 4 months, but the result would have been different. Well, I have another question. To implement changes on the local level, the local authorities probably need to understand this added value that the changes may bring. So talking about transparency, what is the added value that it can provide to the communities? So first of all, the added value can be assessed in material and non-material things. First of all, it's a matter of issue. It's a matter of mutuality. When the denizens delegate their authorities to the deputies, when they can inquire the authorities and to have their issues solved. And when it comes to Khmelnytskyi case, just this morning, I was checking their services, their chatbots, checking the reactions of the denizens. As of the morning, there were 29 inquiries, but you can check the statistics of how efficiently and timely they're being processed, and it's all happening in real time. Quite an interesting tool. And thank you for making it work, hopefully efficiently for the denizens. So first of all, it's about the trust. Talking about more of a digitalizable things. It's a matter of investments. It's a matter of funds that can be extended by the partners, either internal or foreign investors, either private or donor institutions. So any investor, any partner wants to understand that their money wouldn't be stolen, but rather efficiently utilized, that they will be able to demonstrate it to their taxpayers, to explain the process, how the funds were channeled, why that specific city was picked. So again, it's an incredibly important component that is an entry point on which it depends whether there will be a partnership or not, how efficient and long-standing it will be. And also it's about comfort of the lives of the denizens. That's another non-material resource or another result of the transparency and openness that we get, because very frequently it's about digital services that we get used to. We are so indulged, we're so spoiled by them, but in a good sense. So when we're used to get any information in 2 clicks, to complain in 2 clicks, get a response to your complaint, to keep track of the status of your inquiry, to submit documents for aid or for some submit an inquiry for some certificate for yourself. A lot of things that define the basic comfort of the denizens. It's about the quality of life. Mr. Mykola, do you see any correlation between transparency and support of the region, support on part of the international donors or maybe inside? Well, when it comes to monetization, I have a couple of comments. Some of them are conditional. So first of all, what Anastasiia said, the service that allows the denizens to keep track of their inquiries or reports. It can be a banal thing. A person takes a picture of a pit in the road. That picture gets in the system. The mayor sees it. The relevant department sees it. But what is a municipality? It's a huge structure. For example, there's a lot of people working there. 600 persons work only in the executive committee of Khmelnytskyi Municipal Council, and it's more than 1,000 of people overall, a couple of thousands. And now this system allows the mayor to see the condition or the state of affairs real time, and it lets them understand what's going on in the city. Another case is a political monetization, so to say. We understand that the mayors are the political figures, and the transparency provides political monetization, and the voters are going to positively evaluate it. And I'm sure that on a way to European Union, you know, it will be appreciated even more and more, because European Union is also about transparency. And the third point about monetization, within the last 5 years, we were able to raise 1,200 million grant funds, basically a present for the city from the European Union and other donors who work now in the territory of Ukraine. That's a cool result. And we correlated with the transparency rate and with transparency itself, because I can say that donors are looking at those indicators, and they don't want to give money to those who are, first of all, passive. They understand that passive people don't have ambitions. The people don't understand where they're moving. They give the community understanding of transparency and openness, and obviously we correlated as a part of the process, and now the donors are providing us with grants. Anastasiia, do you have any advice for other cities that want to implement the successful example of other Ukrainian cities which were able to achieve good results, such as Khmelnytskyi, when it comes to investments in the region? We understand now it's important for any Ukrainian city. Do you have any advice for those who want to implement such an experience? Well, first of all, any methodology of ours, any study of ours has, in fact, so to say, a roadmap presented by the indicators that we assess. And first of all, our suggestion is to either inquire us, and we will support such an assessment, and we will assist it, so to say, provide a fresh view of the processes taking place in the city, and we will help the city to develop the new action plan. Another important component when it comes to transparency and that block that we're discussing today, a lot of attention is paid by us to the joint entry point, joint window, so to say, where the denizens may come and ask anything they need to. There is sometimes information on a website, but to find it, you need to spend like an hour or two. So theoretically, formally, the information is there, but practically, it cannot be used, or it can hardly be used by the denizens. So when it comes to our Euro-integrational approach, we are going to pay a lot of attention to this. It can be a matter of discussion for many cities, because formally they say we have that information available, but we urge the municipalities to look at those issues through the eyes of the consumers. For example, imagine themselves as a person who needs humanitarian aid. Is it intuitive for them? Where should they apply? Whom should they inquire? Is information about humanitarian aid distribution easily available, or for example, if I need any social exemption or benefit, can I get this information anywhere? Is it easily available to me? So that's the most problematic thing that we've seen during our study, this principle of a joint window. And another thing, not less important, is, I guess, just a fair and transparent analysis of what works well and what needs improvement, what is obsolete, what should be jettisoned, or because sometimes jettisoning something that doesn't work is not less important than implementing something new. So that's the basic advice. Mr. Mykola, do you use the roadmaps developed by Transparency International and other convenient? We always analyze them. We always analyze all of their ratings, and we take into account all of the problematic issues. And we are going to meet once again after publishing of this study. And I would like to thank Transparency International, because they set the threat among the cities. We understand the mayors are political figures, and they will be best influenced by the communities, by the public. And Transparency International has been setting this trend for a number of years, and the cities, they start to compete between each other. And hopefully this trend is going to grow. And Transparency International plays a huge role in this process, and the public will demand it. It's not like the municipality will say we are going to improve in the transparency rating. No, it's the public who is going to demand it, and we will invest more resources in training of the citizens on how to use it, because there's a lot of positive cases even on our end. In Khmelnytskyi, a lot of municipalities have cool initiatives, but do the denizens really know about them? Do they really use them? That's an important question. And we have to invest some efforts, probably even financial resources, in explanation, in advertising of those services, because we work for them. And when we talk to some people, they just don't know that a lot of things can be done online. They don't understand how it can be done. That's why a part of our today's work in Khmelnytskyi is to tell the people how those things can be done, because some services are implemented, but when we analyze, or for example, they are convenient. For example, chatbot, what can be more convenient than taking a picture of a pit in the road or a tree using your phone, and then in that chatbot you can see that your report was registered, it went to the utility company, it fulfilled your, for example, it fulfilled your request, and then you come back and see, and the pit is still there. And you can confirm either they fixed it or not. If they're not, you can report it again. So it's a challenge not only to create, but also to tell about what is already done. Well, in this information space, you know, when sometimes you get 200, 300 pieces of news per day, and sometimes they're as horrific as yesterday, telling about the services of municipal authorities is quite difficult. It's another challenge. Anastasiia, I would like to ask you about other challenges that you're seeing, how to make sure that the most of our cities join these initiatives and to become more transparent, and secondly, so that we could all get closer to those Euro integration processes which are important for Ukrainians. Well, what was not covered, in my opinion, is to think strategically, not only in today's concepts, but also to orient at the long-term processes, no matter how difficult it is in those conditions that we're living. Among all of the challenges we're facing, so long-term strategies for development of the region, development of the municipality, Ukraine, the systems, the vision of where we're moving, starting with the national ideas and ending with the strategy of the development of municipality. It's all incredibly important because first they provide you with the roadmap, they give you hope, they set a vector of movement for you, or the energy of the interest, but obviously you have to know how to combine it with coverage of those basic needs that are present today. And another part of it is an honest communication, something that we're missing on many levels. Sometimes we have to honestly explain that we've picked this priority because we don't have sufficient resources for this or that, or let's pick a priority together because we'll understand the resources are not unlimited. And not to try to decorate the reality that we live in, but rather to be honest. And another thing, it's important to remember about synergy, that it's not only the officials, the representatives of authorities have to do something. The citizens are the active participants of the process. They can suggest something, they can provide some feedback. This works and this doesn't. Let's, for example, improve things here, or we see an opportunity of optimization there, or to submit requests about something to be improved here or there, because again, it's quite a childish position to demand and to wait for something. It's a matter of coordination, cooperation, interaction, and joint work, teamwork, because we understand the challenges faced by the authorities are not trivial at all levels, and those are really people who work 24/7 in a committed manner, experiencing all of the stories by themselves, all of the destruction and tragedies and losses. They are the same people living under strikes with their families. So I would like to urge everybody to empathy to each other, to understanding and co-creation. Well, I would like to mention co-creation. It's a cool case. A lot of municipalities have such a tool as a participation budget and as a community budget, and it helps a lot because today a lot of people criticize, like a lot of people don't understand, why are you putting the cobblestone in the city? Why are you replacing a pipe or improving the crossroad? Sometimes we make it inclusive for persons with disabilities, but when you make it public, when you adopt the community budget by voting, there is less critics, and when somebody comes with the critics, we can say we adopted this resolution together. That's why transparency and engagement of the people is incredibly important, specifically during this time, because it relieves a lot of risks, a lot of misunderstanding. Like Anastasiia has said, it's co-creation. Thank you for this conversation. It was quite concentrated, in my opinion. I would like to thank all of the mayors of all the local authorities who, despite Russian aggression, despite all of the consequences of this aggression, keep trying to improve, to work transparently, and to listen to their communities. It's important for us, and I want to thank Transparency International, thanks to whom this process got this momentum. I want to thank you, and obviously I want to thank our security and defense forces, thanks to whom we can gather here and hold events like this. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Thank you.